This is so exciting. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Twyla Evans-Carthen, chair of the University Diversity Committee Conversation on Diversity series, and we'd like to truly take time to embrace the moment. I'd like to introduce our Vice President for Student Affairs to welcome all of you to this event. Those of you that are visiting from off campus, at least you know you're in for a treat as I introduce this amazing woman of Student Affairs, Dr. Paz Oliveras. Give her a round of applause as she comes up. Thank you.
Wow, good afternoon, everyone. This is awesome. It's great to see such a large crowd, and I'm so happy to see so many students here. It's my honor and pleasure to be here to welcome you today. On behalf of Dr. Tomas Morales, our president here at Cal State San Bernardino, unfortunately, President Morales is unable to be with us, but he understands the importance of this event and sends his regrets. On behalf of President Morales, the cabinet, and the entire university, I'd like to extend my immense gratitude to the members of the University Diversity Committee and other coordinators of today's event. As many of you are aware, the University Diversity Committee is near and dear to the president's heart because of its commitment to promoting diversity and inclusion to the CSUSB community, both on and off campus, by offering free events that are open to all. In spring 2005, the first event in the Conversations on Diversity series was held, entitled Culture and Gender Through Dance, with Mara Owens-Townsend, Artistic Director of Project 21. The events now take place 3 times each academic year, and this is the 16th year of the series. These events provide students, faculty, staff, and members of the community an opportunity to engage in respectful conversations and share their views. Hosted by the Conversations on Diversity Subcommittee, the events promote a greater understanding of different perspectives in the hopes of dispelling negative stereotypes and personal biases. Each year, the subcommittee brings 3 renowned speakers and/or artists to campus to share their views on a specific topic of diversity, including but not limited to race, ethnicity, disabilities, age, religion, sex, gender, and sexuality. Cal State San Bernardino strives to create a campus community that welcomes, celebrates, and promotes respect for all individuals. Likewise, the Division of Student Affairs supports these efforts through a variety of programs and services. As with Hispanic Heritage Month and Native American Heritage Month, the Division of Student Affairs, along with numerous campus partners, will be offering a number of exciting programs for Black History Month starting on February 3rd, so please keep an eye out for more information on all the wonderful events we have planned. I'm also pleased to take this opportunity to announce the hiring of our first ever Associate Director for Diversity and Inclusion, Dr. Jacob Chaco, who unfortunately couldn't be here today because he's delivering programming, who's working under the Santos Manuel Student Union to provide oversight to our 7 affinity centers. So if you didn't know, I know there's a lot of students here, if you didn't know, we have 7 affinity centers housed in this building. They have a number of upcoming programs, including a Native Beading Circle tomorrow in our First People Center from 4 to 6 p.m., Chinese New Year celebration this Friday from 6 to 9 p.m. here in this building, a film screening and discussion of Latinos Beyond the Real, exploring Latinx representation in the media on February 2nd from 5 to 7 p.m. in our Cross-Cultural Center, a Taste of India event on February 12th from 4 to 6 p.m. here in this building, the drag show on February 22nd from 7 to 11 p.m. here in this building, and the Vagina Monologues from March 6th through 8th also here in this building. We hope you will join us and encourage your peers, and for those staff and faculty here, we hope you will join us and also encourage your students to join us for these programs as we work to recognize and celebrate the diverse experiences and identities that shape our campus community. As you know, inclusivity, respect, social justice, and equity are core values at CSUSB, that help us to accomplish our mission and goals. The university continues to make strides through the various initiatives noted here, including its continued support of this series. With that, I want to take a moment to recognize and thank those who made this program possible. I would like to ask all members of the University Diversity Committee and Subcommittee who are here with us today to please stand so we can recognize you for your great work. Thank you. And I know there's more of you, but thank you all for those of you that are here. I know it's always a team effort to put on programs like this. We understand that today's event would not have been possible without all of your hard work and the dedication. So again, we thank you, as well as the many members that were not able to be here today. In closing, I also want to express our appreciation to Dr. Mary Fong for helping us to engage in conversation on today's topic, understanding the Chinese way of communicating. Today's topic is particularly special because it is being delivered by one of our very own. Dr. Fong is a professor of communication studies here at Cal State San Bernardino. Today, she will share both her personal experiences and research on Chinese communication patterns to provide all of us with her valuable insights on Chinese culture and social interactions. Again, thank you so much for attending, and we hope you enjoyed today's program. Thank you.
Now it gives me great honor and privilege to actually introduce Dr. Rong Chen, who is emeritus faculty here and has held many leadership positions here. So thank you for coming to introduce our guest speaker. Let's give Dr. Chen a round of applause.
Good afternoon. It's my great honor to be able to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Mary Fong. I'm sure some of you might have spotted Dr. Fong jogging the campus with two dogs, which are majestic looking as their owner. Just a few years ago, in my memory, Dr. Fong completed a wonderful dissertation on whose committee I had the pleasure of serving and then joined CSUSB. That dissertation was responsible for a lot of good things to come in the next few years. So Dr. Fong launched herself into the teaching of cross-cultural communication to the masses of CSUSB students. She has published numerous articles in premier journals, and she co-authored a well-received textbook. But all this has not fatigued the infatigable Dr. Fong. He has been seen at Home Depot. She has been seen at Home Depot. She has been evidenced to apply for a patent for a hood that would, I'm sure, help millions of people hanging things in their patio. There's also evidence that she strolled yard sales in San Bernardino. I do not have any evidence for that. I think nowadays, you don't need evidence, right? If you don't believe me, turn on the TV and watch the impeachment trial. If you think that all this stuff could keep Dr. Fong occupied, you would be agonizingly mistaken. Dr. Fong has a lot of time, a lot more spare time you can imagine. How do I know? With her high school friend, she has been engaged in presenting to the world a trilogy of memoirs, even covering topics as important as those that transcend cultures in this world and transcend the boundaries between worlds. Today is our lucky day. We all are going to hear her speaking on the first installment of that three-part tome, very appropriately entitled Too Hot Nuts to Crack. Dr. Fong.
How are you all doing? I hope you can hear me. Good. Well, thank you, Dr. Oliveras, for your intro, and also Rong, your wit and humor. And also, I'd just like to thank Twyla for just noticing my memoir and supporting me. And I also want to thank the UDC subcommittee on supporting me and allowing me this opportunity to speak before you. So, are you ready? Yes. Let's speak some Chinese Cantonese. Play with me, folks. Oh, this way. I gotta get used to the dynamics here. All right, so play with me, folks. Repeat after me. Gong hei fat choi. Gong hei fat choi. San ning fai lok. San ning fai lok. Long ma jing san. Long ma jing san. Oh, your Chinese Cantonese is just impeccable. Beautiful. Now, these metaphors and imagery, the majestic dragon and the galloping horses, all moving together to create these high spirits, courage, strength, purpose, and adventure. We just created this positive energy amongst us, and that's what Chinese people like to do during the Chinese New Year, especially. And the Chinese New Year just began this past Saturday. Well, we might throw in the solar new year here on January 1st for us, so we're spreading all this positivity. So what I'd like to do is share with you some of my cultural and intercultural experiences as a Chinese American. Growing up as a Chinese American, I had one foot in American culture and the other foot in Chinese culture at the same time. I was born in Northern California, but pretty much grew up in the Southern California area, the suburban areas of LA, and also lived several years in Chinatown, Los Angeles. My parents were born and raised in Guangdong or Canton, China. When I reflect back on my upbringing, I've had to navigate at times through confusion because I was living in two cultures at the same time. Eventually, I was able to come to a place of understanding the Chinese way of communicating. So no worries, I'll be your trustworthy guide today to decode some of the Chinese cultural patterns of communication. Well, first I'd like to introduce to you a few concepts that will help enhance your intercultural competence. Then I'll share some of my cultural and intercultural experiences and discuss research findings from a few of my published studies. I sense that many people are not aware of the cultural and intercultural differences of verbal and nonverbal communications that leads to misunderstandings and conflict at times, especially if both parties are speaking the same language, such as English. However, arming ourselves with cultural and intercultural knowledge will help us to identify points of difference in which we can begin resolving misunderstandings. Let's take a look at the definition of culture. Culture is a system of symbols, signs, meanings, and norms shared by group members and passed down to the following generations of members who will maintain and modify particular aspects of the system in order to adapt to the needs of the group. That was one whole breath, one sentence. Well, I usually spend a whole session breaking down all these concepts, but that's not possible during this time. However, what I would like to do is essentially, you come from a particular ethnic culture, or also two different cultures, depending on what the contrast of those two cultures are. And you know what the verbal and nonverbal communications that are appropriate in your culture. You know the rules of speaking and the norms of interpretation and the rules of interaction. So you are a culturally competent member. You know your value system, and you know what relationships, how you should talk to your grandmother or your grandparents and your siblings and your parents. With this in mind, every culture has their own systematic way of communicating, verbal and nonverbal communications that are appropriate and meaningful to the cultural members. So essentially, there's no right or wrong culture, appropriate or inappropriate culture, or a culture that's better or a culture that's less than. As a researcher, I've been disciplined to remain neutral, and it is not my place to be critical or to evaluate culture. I have a perspective that all ethnic cultures are equal, valuable, and worthy in their contributions. I've been interested in discovering and understanding parts of the cultural system to enable others to increase their cultural and intercultural competence. I've been also interested in conducting communication research on points of intercultural difference and intercultural conflicts so that we understand those points of difference and begin to adapt and negotiate those differences. We hear at times to have tolerance for others. I've also have heard, I have to tolerate this. That's what comes to my mind whenever I hear we should be more tolerant of people from various cultures. Well, I decided to look it up, this definition of tolerance. According to the Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary, tolerance is defined as the capacity to endure pain or hardship. That's one definition. Another definition, which I think they pertain to when they say be tolerant of one another, is sympathy or indulgence for beliefs or practices differing from or conflicting with one's own, and the act of allowing the deviation from the standard. Well, I don't know about you. When I was growing up, I hear people say, oh, just be tolerant. I'm tolerating you. And so that comes to my mind. I'm thinking, oh, well, it seems kind of like you're struggling or you're holding your lip or your tongue or something. And so what I would prefer is I like the idea of let's be accepting of variation. Let's strive for understanding through experience, our experiences through knowledge, through wisdom. Be open rather than putting up with something. I think a significant principle in understanding another culture is capturing their insider's point of view. That is the native's point of view, the cultural member's point of view. So if you want to understand another culture, you have to give up your own cultural system and put on the shoes as much as possible of the other cultural members and listen, try to understand their value system, try to ask them questions, observe about what are their rules of speaking, what's appropriate, inappropriate to them. So you're engaging in perspective taking. That's going into the cultural insider's view. But if you're taking it from your view, your standards of what you're thinking that they are verbally or non-verbally saying, then you're taking the outsider's view. And if you take the outsider's view, it's highly likely that you will be inaccurate in what your interpretation and what the meaning of what the situation is happening. It's like trying to watch a soccer game using football game rules to make sense of the soccer game. Obviously, that does not make any sense, and it clearly does not work. Let me give you a couple examples so you understand what I mean by insider and outsider's view. Well, I had hosted an international student from Taiwan when I was assistant professor in the 1990s, mid-1990s. And he said, oh, my parents are going to come to the US for the first time, and they're going to come visit me, and I would like you to meet them. I said, oh, okay, just let me know, and I'll meet up with them. So he picked them up at the airport, and we sat in the living room, and we're smiling. Now, they speak Mandarin Chinese, and I'm familiar with Cantonese Chinese. So we're over there smiling, and in the very first minute, the father had said, oh, you need to eat more. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh yeah, okay, but I'm not used to hearing that comment in the first introductions of meeting someone. And then, so how do you perceive this from your view? Where do you think it's going on in that interaction? Well, you're probably thinking, well, I could take this literally. He's telling me to eat more, okay? But what is he implying? Is he implying that, oh, you look underfed, you look starved, You look a little emaciated. I mean, is he trying to insult me, or what is he doing? But from the insider's view of Chinese culture, what's happening, the interpretation is, he's saying, I care for your well-being. Eat more, I care for your well-being, because in the context, his son is living at my home, and I'm taking care of his well-being. Let me give you another example. The example here is two middle-aged men. They're good friends. They haven't seen each other for quite a while, and they say, hey, let's have lunch. I haven't seen you in a while. So they meet up at the restaurant, and so they see each other. They said, hey, hi, yeah, you kind of look like you're gaining some weight here, huh? Oh, yeah. Oh, but look at you. You look kind of chubby. You got even a double chin there. And they're laughing away. So from your point of view, what do you think is going on in this interaction? Well, you're probably thinking, well, I could take it literally. They just told each other they need, they're gaining weight. Or they're saying, hey, you need to hit the gym a little bit more. Or, but from the insider's point of view, they are actually giving each other an indirect compliment. They're complimenting each other, implying that, hey, you're prospering. You must be doing great in business. And you got enough to eat, so you look, healthy. And so those are just two examples about insiders and outsiders' point of view. Overall, we live in a judgmental society. People pointing fingers at other people from other cultures when their cultural expectations are not met. Calling people from another culture rude, inappropriate, disrespectful, or blaming the other that they should do this and not that. If you find your reactions to be negative, you may feel upset at times, or critical, or ignoring, or withdrawing from the intercultural interaction. Well, you might want to think twice, and it's happened to me on occasions. So what I suggest you should do is step back and breathe and be zen. Look within yourself. Be still. I am taking the outsider's view. That's why I'm so terribly upset that this person did not meet my expectations, and I find them inappropriate. There is some explanation of what's going on. So what you want to do is engage in a conversation, if you can, with the person, ask them what they meant, and what they were doing. Now, if you're not able to do that, you could do it at a later time, or you could ask the translator, or you could ask someone who's from that culture, and they could give you the insider's view. What I'd like to do is share with you some of my personal cultural experiences. I grew up in the 1960s in Long Beach, California. My parents were in the Chinese restaurant business, and they worked very, very, very hard. I have two older brothers, and we were all latchkey children. Now, one of my brothers is 10 years older than me, and then my other brother's 2 years older than me. And we were the only Asian family in the neighborhood. I recall clearly in the first grade that in the first semester, the little girls never played with me. So I just played by myself and went on the monkey bars and hopscotch alone. So I was essentially very solo. I was an independent party, not politically, that is, but I was a lone ranger. There was another instance when I was in the first grade. I was standing in line. We were all getting ready to go back into the classroom, and because after recess, and all of a sudden I was surrounded by 3 or 4 boys, and they slanted their eyes and they bucked their teeth, and they said, "You're a Jap." Now, what do you do about a situation like that? I just looked at them, but in my mind, I was thinking, "Oh no, you actually got it all wrong. I'm actually Chinese." There was another instance in the first grade in which the teacher told us, "Hey, bring some objects for show and tell." So I was so proud to bring my chopsticks and my Chinese porcelain soup spoon to class, and everyone else had their objects on the table, and I was curious during that day, "Oh, I wonder what everyone else brought. I wonder where my items are." So I was walking towards the table, and I noticed that my Chinese porcelain spoon was on the floor. It was shattered. Immediately, I went to my desk and got my brown paper bag and picked up the pieces and put it in the bag and threw it away after class. And so I didn't even tell the teacher. I didn't tell anybody. Now, these three incidences triggered my memory of my brother, who said to me one day at home, and he said it in a sad tone. He said, "Mary, you're the only friend I have." So at that point, I didn't know what he meant 2 years prior, but after these experiences, I realized we shared a similar experience of feeling excluded and rejected by our peers. Soon after, at home, I was looking in the mirror at my face, and I started sobbing and crying. And I said, "I don't want to be Chinese. I want to be an American." At that point, I suffered from an identity crisis. Well, I'm happy to report that after 10 years of therapy, I no longer have an identity crisis. I'm just kidding, I didn't have therapy. But seriously, we know when people are bullied, they fall into depression, fear, and suicidal at times. So briefly, to let you know that my memoir, Two Hard Nuts to Crack, is the first in a series of a trilogy called A Magnificent Mess. Essentially, in this trilogy, I asked some overarching questions, such as big life questions I always wondered about since I was a little kid. What is the meaning and purpose of life? What is the name of the game of life? Why are we living this life, this journey now? What happens after we die? So I teach courses in spirituality that also includes dying and afterlife communication. So I'm pretty well versed on the research that mainstream America is not aware of. And that is my interest, is to communicate my specialization in cultural and intercultural communications and spirituality and love and compassion so that people beyond the university level can learn about. Now, in this memoir, I share my cultural, intercultural, and spiritual experiences to show how we juggle these competing forces in the performance of our everyday lives. But of course, in this talk right here, I'm only going to focus on the cultural and intercultural aspects. So we moved from Long Beach, and then we moved, when I was in elementary school, to Torrance and Sun Valley. And fortunately, the kids did treat me nicely. Again, we were the only Asian family in both neighborhoods, and I felt more inclusion. By the 5th grade, my family moved to Chinatown, Los Angeles, and we lived there for about 4.5 years before we moved to Highland Park, California. And the Chinese kids, it was the first time I interacted with Chinese kids, so it was a really weird and awkward feeling because I was used to Euro-American friends. And so what I noticed with the Chinese little kids, not only did they speak Cantonese and other dialects like Toisanwa and Siapwa and all that, it was a nice variety. And also, they tend to be a little on the shy side, and they like to giggle, and they were well behaved in the classroom, and they weren't very outspoken in the classroom. However, both groups, both communities, on the playground, those kids were like little monsters. They would just be so competitive and all. So from Torrance to Sun Valley to Chinatown, let's turn the clock to when I was in my college years. When I was in the master's program, I started dating a Japanese American guy. My mom was livid. She was so angry. She started ignoring me, but at the time when she found out, she just started having watery eyes. Her face was just like angry, and she was trembling, and she was holding onto a chair, and she was kind of shoving it aside. I said, oh, what's going on here? And then she was shouting in the air. She didn't talk to me face to face, but she shouted in the air, and I was listening very carefully. And she was talking about the days that when she was in China in the 1920s during World War II, that Japanese had invaded China. And it was horrific. It was a devastating experience for my mom. And that's what she was conjuring in her mind. And of course, the community back then in the 1920s, they weren't happy about Japanese people. So, 2 or 3 days later, my oldest brother, who's 10 years older than me, he comes to me. He says, Mary, there's 2 guys. One guy's Chinese, you marry the Chinese guy. And I'm standing there thinking, I'm still listening. I'm a pretty good listener. I don't really refute a lot. I look at, oh. And then I didn't think my brother had that perspective. But he said that, well, mom and dad is really upset and displeased, and I'm the go-between guy to send the message to me. Now, you have to understand, in Chinese culture, we're very group-oriented or collectivistic. Typically, in the first and second generation, it just really depends how the adaptation goes as the Chinese generations move on. But what the Chinese people really like is maintaining harmony in the group. So that's why my brother was used as a go-between to maintain the harmony between my parents and me by sending a messenger. Now, you're probably asking, what did I do? Well, you can ask me after my talk, or you can read the juicy inside scoop in my memoir. All right, so another pattern of communication I noticed was when my parents would come visit. Not my parents, my relatives would come visit, and that was very rare. I recall one visit in which my parents said, oh, your daughter is pretty. Immediately, my parents would say, no, she's not. And so I'm standing hearing this interaction, and I'm thinking, okay, I can handle the rejection. I would agree that I am not Miss America, all right? And so you have to understand the normal pattern of appropriate behavior in Chinese culture is that you deny or reject a compliment because it is an indirect way of accepting a compliment with a great value and emphasis on modesty. There was another relative that came by. She was in San Francisco, and so she was holding her daughter in her lap. And so my mom, my dad, and I were sitting over on one side, and so she was just going swaying her daughter, and she said, your name is Mary, and her name is Mary. But she's prettier than you. And they kept on smiling, and the daughter didn't look offended whatsoever. But in my mind, I'm sitting over there, I'm infuriated. How could a mother say that to her daughter in public? All right, step back, Mary. Breathe and relax and be zen. Be still. Come to the realization that I was taking an outsider's view of the Chinese culture. What was happening was the mother was sending me an indirect compliment by that dialogue there. And I didn't catch on when I was in high school of what was going on. Another example, I had a Filipino-American friend. She was born in the Philippines, and she came to the U.S. When she was in elementary school. And we ran into each other at the supermarket. And she says, oh, I'm studying for the bar exam. I said, oh, that's great. And I said, oh, I'm be going to the University of Washington for my PhD in a couple of weeks. And her response was, oh, that's wonderful that you're going to go for your PhD study there. Oh, my sister went there as an undergraduate, and the campus is so beautiful. I'm so jealous of you. Immediately, I heard all of these bells, alarm bells go on in my mind, thinking, alarm, alarm, oh my goodness, my enculturation of modesty is so important. And I know about always observing Chinese culture, they always reject or deny the compliment. So what I said is, oh, well, I don't know. I think when I go up there, I'll be locked up in jail for studying for a few years. Now, I actually felt very comfortable saying that back then, because it was like, you don't want other people to be jealous of you, because then they may try to hurt you. That's what I was taught growing up. A last pattern, before I move on to my research, is that Chinese culture, first and second generation, overall, just depends on their adaptation, is that we're not considered a touchy culture. We're not into the hugging business. Whereas in Latino culture, you kiss cheek to cheek and you hug and so forth. But we don't do that when we greet one another. I'll give you an example. So my sister-in-law, who's from Beijing, her colleague, Dr. Ma, was visiting the US one day, and so she was introducing us. And so she said, oh, Dr. Ma, this is my sister-in-law, Mary, and all that. And I said, oh, hi. So I'm reaching out to give him a handshake, and he's just standing there. I said, what do you do? I go, oh, hi, how are you? I hope you're doing fine. Do you enjoy yourself over here? Then the day I left LA to go to Seattle, I packed my bags in the car to go to the airport, and my mom was standing at the front porch. And so I said, all right, Mom, I'll see you during break time. I'll be sure to call you. And I gave her a big hug. I gave her a big hug for the first time in my life when I was 29 years old. And my mom's reaction was, okay, you be careful. All right, Mom, I'll be sure to call you. Okay, Yunji, be careful. Okay, so I went there and I came back for my break, and then it was time for me to go back, and she knew I was coming at her with a hug. Says, okay, Mom, see you next time. And she loosened up. Her hands kind of where my back was. Okay, you take care. Yanjia, Yanjia. I said, okay, Mom. And so today, now she is so accepting of hugs. She enjoys them. We did it very occasionally. It just depends on the situation. These cultural and intercultural life experiences were very invaluable for me when I went to the University of Washington to study, because you go for your PhD, not for a title. You go there to learn how to do research. To do research to be able to add to the field of knowledge and your specialization. And so these experiences, a handful of them I've given you, have really been helpful for me. And so I just want to share really quickly a few of the studies and the findings. Typically I spend a whole half an hour or more on each one, but I got to rattle them off really quickly. So the first, well, we'll go skip that one. The first study that I did was with my advisor, Jerry Phillipson, and we looked at Chinese indirect persuasive strategies. So we were interested in looking at what do parents, how do they communicate indirectly and try to persuade us? They use questions, comparisons, and implied statements. It is what it is. I just want to move on to the next one, which is important. Now this, I want to show you a video, a 1-minute video clip of persuasive strategy that the parents use. Now this is Geraldine's mom. She's calling Geraldine, her daughter, to come downstairs because her friend, Julia, has arrived, and then they're going to go shopping. So what I'd like you to do is watch this video clip and tell me who is the third party and what is going on here.
小人啊，茱莉亚嚟咗啦。
Okay, I'm coming.
朱莉啊，你靚咗噃，肥緊啲啊嘛，係啊，
肥咗
係
不過唔係靚
唔係肥
咗
少少嘅，好樣啲啊，係靚啲啊。
嗯，
點啊？你媽媽跳啊，好啲嘛？
佢啲血壓，你老人家都係咁啦，你都知啦，冇乜嘢㗎，應該冇事。
咁你就應該要時時翻去睇下佢啦。啲老人家啊，好中意啲仔女常時翻嚟睇下㗎，係咪
哦，
啊？
我哋走啦，爸
咁
爸。
快走啊？
係啊，約咗人啦，
哦，
下次嚟探你嚇。
好啊，得閒嚟坐咯。
哦
嚇
拜拜。
，OK，goodbye。
Okay, so in this video clip, which comes from the movie Dim Sum by Wayne Wang, and he's the one who did the Joy Luck Club movie later on, but this is one of his early independent movies. And so, who was the third party? Well, you probably figured it out. It was Geraldine. So what was happening here was that the mother was killing two birds with one stone with her message. She's there talking to Julia, says, oh, how are your parents? You know, parents like it when their children come home to visit them. So at that moment, you could see Geraldine coming from the background. She's in earshot of hearing the message. The mother doesn't want to tell her own daughter, come see me, visit me, and so forth. But by sending it to another person, advising them, she understands what her needs are. Let's take a look at another scene here that was found in the study, intermediaries. Now, you're familiar with it because I told you the situation when my brother came to talk to me because my parents were so upset I was dating a Japanese person. So, take a look at the intermediaries here.
Here, you take it in, Mom.
你拎出去啦。
No, I don't want to take it in. They're going to ask me the same old thing. When are you going to get married?
佢哋唔會問你嘅，呢個咧。
Where are you? Let's play.
嚟。
Ah, oh. Congratulations!
Yes, congratulations cake to Mom.
係啊，美國旗啦，嗬。係咧。
When we eat your cake, huh, Jardine?
Don't you like this cake?
No, Geraldine. We want your wedding cake. The one that smells so good and make your mama so happy.
Well, would you like me to cut this cake now?
No, not now. We haven't finished our game.
Okay, I'm just going to leave it on the table. Good luck, everyone.
All right, so you already can figure out the intermediaries are the mother's pals around the mahjong table. They say, where's your cake? You know, the wedding cake. The one that makes your mother so happy and smells so good. So the intermediaries, they can be very direct. But it becomes indirect because the source is really the mother. And then her pals know, as they are sharing each other's lives, that they say, oh, it's our responsibility. We gotta help out Geraldine's mother to relay the message to the daughter because the daughter is not getting married and she wants her to get married soon. We found two more communication strategies, and that is unspoken action. And that's essentially the silent treatment, which my mother gave me the silent treatment when she was very displeased with me, and I'm sure some of you might have received silent treatments too. And we found that typically in a Chinese first generation, along with their second generation kids, that they will try to use the indirect strategies first in persuasion. Then, if the kids aren't doing what they're supposed to do on topics of caring for the elderly and getting married, then they would resort to direct communications. But in disciplining their children from day to day, they could be quite direct. Another study that was conducted by me was looking at speaking patterns during the Chinese New Year. And as you well know, the Chinese people really like to be positive. They want to do things that would create good luck to start the new year off. So it's all this energy. So good luck refers to goodness, good health, wealth, having no difficulties, everything goes as you wish. And of course, bad luck is the opposite, misfortune, there's pain and suffering and so forth and so on. So, I'm looking at the speaking patterns here, and one is greetings. We're familiar with it. We said some greetings at the beginning, and it's giving each other good luck, good wishes at the beginning of the new year. Then we have positive conversations, and that is a rule of speaking during, especially the first 3 days of the Chinese New Year, in which you avoid arguing, avoid saying anything negative. You just always want to have a positive tone. Chinese foods is also another speaking pattern during the Chinese New Year. And what we found was the Chinese are quite witty and inventive in trying to create more positivity. So they would eat certain items in their Chinese New Year. For example, fish. Fish is nü, but you could say nü in a different tone, and it will also mean surplus, excess, and abundance. So they find homophones to a food item that has a good luck meaning. Hair vegetable is not actually hair, but it looks like hair, but it's a vegetable, very fine, and it's fa choi. But if you say it as fa choi with the lower tone on choi, it's wealth. New Year cake is ninggo, and you say it with the same tone. Ninggo means year growth. Lettuce is sang choi, or you could say it with a lower tone on choi is sang choi, lively, grow, or create money. Tangerine, gum, same homophone. It also means gold. This is where you folks come in. You're impeccable Chinese Cantonese. All right, so they also perform, or they say prosperity food rhymes around the New Year's Eve dinner and during the New Year's Day dinner. And repeat after me, folks. Yao Yi, Yao Yi, Yao Yi, Yao Yi, Ning Ning Yao Yi, Ning Ning Yao Yi. Oh, so perfect you are. So having fishes, every year there's excess. So on every Chinese, New Year Eve dinner and New Year's Day dinner, there's always a fish. Now I do want to mention really quickly, I remember after completing the study and I went home, and my sister-in-law invited the family to go over to her place at Chinese New Year Eve dinner. To my shocking surprise, she carries in a fish on the plate, but it's all chopped up. Now, after doing the study, they say you should keep the fish whole, because if you chop it up, that's kind of saying, in the coming year, your life is going to be severed in some way. And now she's from mainland China. I forgot exactly what area, but so the point here is that regionally it could differ. I haven't gotten around to asking her why, but I was just like, petrified, but I said, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything here. That's not what my participants said. They emphasized, you have a whole fish. Another prosperity food rhyme. You guys are great. Jin doi look, look. Jin doi look, look. Help me out. Play with me, folks. 1, 2, 3. Jin doi look, look. Gam nan mun uk. Gam nan mun uk. Oh, round are the fried bowls. The house is full of gold and silver. But sometimes when you're communicating during the Chinese New Year celebration, especially the first 3 days, you might do a slip. You might say something negative. Like if someone asks, oh, how's your grandmother doing? Oh, she's in the hospital, she's not doing, oh. So the person's trying to be honest, but they kind of did a slip and then forgot to be positive. But the Chinese are quite witty. They have a way to remedy this. And so so what they say is, Choi hao soy, jiao gong go. In other words, spit out your saliva, speak once more. So it gives the opportunity that person to remedy or repair what he or she has said. Or you could say, Choi, Choi, daiga laisi, lucky, very lucky, auspicious. Now, another thing is you don't want to break any glass during the first 3 days. And so, you know, sometimes you might make an act and you're just washing dishes and it slips from your fingers and it breaks. Well, you're not on a sinking ship because what the speaker or hearer can say is lok di hoi fa. Lok di means fall ground. Hoi fa is open flowers. So you have to understand Chinese people are really into imagery, and the whole idea is that, when it blooms, there's prosperity, there's growth, and there's wealth. Now, it's very common that Chinese families, first generation, and to a certain extent, second generation, they will go buy a plant that is known to flower, and so they'll put it by the windowsill, and when the flowers are all excited, it's going to flower and all that. But if it doesn't start flowering, then they go buy another one and they replace it, and then it flowers and they feel good about that. Now, but there's something to it, but I don't have time to talk about it, but I have my own personal experience. So if there are broken pieces on the ground, they can also say soy jaw, becomes soy soy ping on, meaning peace in every year. The last study I want to share my findings are dealing with intercultural complement interactions. So we know that North Americans or Euro-Americans, they know the appropriate ways to accept a compliment, right? You say thank you, or thank you, I could have did a better job. That's appropriate, right? But in the Chinese culture, you know that the appropriate way is to deny a compliment, to show heavy modesty. So what I found in my research is that the behaviors that are demonstrated by Euro-Americans or North Americans is that they are generous. They're generous in their behaviors, meaning that they are liberal in giving or sharing, abundant or ample. Whereas the Chinese, I found that their behaviors in this intercultural complement interaction is that they're selective. They pick out carefully from among many as most suitable, of special excellence, or carefully chosen. So let's take a look at this table of my findings. I found 6 points of difference between the North Americans or Euro-Americans and the Chinese. Now the Chinese, that's just easy for me to say Chinese, but it was Chinese international students that I had interviewed. And they came from Taiwan and Hong Kong and mainland China. So all 3 regions it applies. In fact, I thought that they all read the same upbringing manual on how to behave because they all gave the same response. So one, we already know about the compliment response. I don't need to say anything more. A second point of difference is quantity of compliments. The North Americans were generous in compliment giving, whereas Chinese, they were very sparing in compliments. You know, when I reflect on my upbringing, I only recollect 2 compliments I received from my mom. One, when I was in elementary school, when I had long hair, and she wanted me to have a rice bowl haircut, and she chopped it off, and I got very angry and upset because all little girls like to have long hair, and it was picture day too, coming up. And so then she complimented, look at this picture, it looks really good. That's the only time I can remember. The other time is after I got my PhD, she said, "Ni yao kan lek." I didn't know what kan lek mean. She said, "You're a hard worker." It was only 2 times I recall. There might have been some afterwards, but for now, those 2. Okay, and so compliment sparing. Third area of difference is adjectives. North Americans are known to use strong adjectives like excellent, great, awesome, fantastic. The whole list goes on, right? But in Chinese culture, they report that they are gentle with their adjectives. What's typical is they'll say good, very good, good, very, isn't that exciting? Very good. Okay, sometimes they might say if someone's the smartest cat in the class, they say, "Ne hou chongming," "Oh, you're very bright." Compliment intent. Well, in North American culture, compliment intent is used to encourage sometimes, such as when a little kid is a softball game and they say, and the kid strikes out, and the parents say, oh, it was a good try. You did better than last time. Next time around, you do better. Good, right? But in Chinese culture, they don't give a compliment to encourage. Instead, they might do something else. They might say, hey, how come you don't hold the bat up better? How come your posture wasn't, correct? How come you didn't do it? So it's more of trying to improve and correct the child. Range of compliment topics. In North American culture, you well know that it's very broad. They're generous, they're compliments on every topic, from your toenails to your house to your degree, just anything there's a compliment. But in Chinese culture, it's very narrow. They typically like to give compliments if someone's competent in some area, or they are the very best in something. So they like to emphasize on ability. Channel is the last area of difference, and channel refers to how you send a message through like the internet or through texting, the means or medium of sending a message. And for North Americans, we commonly give compliments face-to-face. That's just one way. There's other ways too. But in Chinese culture, it's really embarrassing to give compliments face-to-face. It's just like, sometimes you get really freaked out. But if it's something protocol, like you're going to visit someone, you're supposed to say, oh, you have a nice place. I mean, that is pretty much typical, but in terms of giving a compliment to another person, they feel a little embarrassed or shy about it. So they like to use the third-party strategy at times. So third-party strategy you already know. So I tell this person, I'm complimenting this person over here, but the person's not around, and I tell this person, oh, I really like what Dina did and so forth. So this person knows it's their responsibility to put over to Dina and say, hey, Mary really thought that you did a good job on this. Now, understand that Chinese people do enjoy receiving compliments. They do, but they just have been enculturated and feel very shy, and they know they're brought up to be very modest. The last bit of data or findings I want to share with you is, do all Chinese people communicate the same way? No, there's variation depending on where their adaptation is. Intercultural shock state, if they have no clue that Americans give compliments or you're supposed to say thank you, the Chinese students had said that, I get anxious, I just really surprised, I don't even know what to say, so they're not expecting it. So when I describe all four of these orientations, they are states. And why I say it's state, meaning that if a Euro-American gave you a personal compliment, you have beautiful eyes, like that. I mean, it's kind of like, wow. I think most people would kind of be, whoa. And so they might not handle it well. They might be in the intercultural shock state. But other compliments that are not so personal, they might be in accommodation state. So each of these states, I describe them talking about the affective, the emotional state, cognitive, what is their knowledge about the host culture, and behavioral component is what do they say and do non-verbally. So the resistance state is new to the research field, and that means that some Chinese, I know I'm supposed to say thank you, but I refuse to say thank you because that rubs me the wrong way, because all my life I've been enculturated to be modest. And if I say thank you, it's just like, yeah, I'm really hot. And so, you just feel like, so they're really resistant. So they might just change the topic or something like that. Accommodation state deals with, oh, I like the American culture, so I want to practice that way. So some will practice prior to going to a birthday party, and they say, what kind of compliments can I give? How could I respond? Because they want to be smooth. And lastly, you could tell by cultural competence state, that is where a Chinese person can switch codes and communicate appropriately in Chinese culture and communicate appropriately in the North American culture. So pretty much, there you have it. I just want to say really quickly, I don't know if you received on your way out, it's just a little souvenir. I made a copy of the ebook cover for you. If you're interested, you don't have to take it, but it's a little souvenir. And it is sold on Amazon. And let's see, so pretty much what's really cool about this is that I put 90 songs integrated in which you link it to the internet, and they match up so well to the life events I've experienced. In fact, one friend said, it's like a movie. It was like watching a movie. And there's also cultural and spiritual educational videos. So you could read it off a laptop cell, iPad, Kindle, tablets, what have you. You don't have to get a Kindle. Okay, so if you're interested, I am going to do a free ebook signing. I know a lot of you have to get going, but those of you who have time, I will be back there. However, since I'm chair, if you happen to be interested in getting a signing, you could email me and come during my office hours, and I'll be happy to sign an ebook cover with an acrylic frame by 4x6, and I'll chat with you. You have any questions? I'd be happy to respond.
Let's give Dr. Fong a round of applause. We're so excited for her journey and sharing her story. Do we have any questions from the audience? We have microphones on both sides, front and back, to my left, your right on the far end, and then we have mics here. Do we have any questions for Dr. Fong? Don't be shy, and if you need us to walk around, we'll do that as well. Raise your hand so that I can see you. You know, Professor Charlie Eaton may have some questions for her students, so she may even give extra credit.
All right, so this is, I don't know if it's off topic, but you've mentioned that your mother was like a little distraught about, you know, you dating a Japanese American. Like, how do you deal with that? Because my mother is a Mexican woman, so she doesn't like when I even date outside that, because she's like, oh, they don't know how to cook and this and that. Hijo, why you do all this? And so it's like, how do you deal with like that prejudice? I wouldn't even say prejudice, that just the, I guess, isolation you get from that?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I did. And then I won't tell you all the juicy stuff, but essentially what I did is I felt that I should respect my parents because I live under their roof, okay? But I also have to respect myself because I should live the life I should live. So, don't tell to me, people, but you know what I did? I secretively dated him. That's what I did, because I had to live my life, and then I realized that he was not the one. You know, he was a Stanford graduate twice, but I don't say that in the memoir because I don't want him to recognize, I want other people to think that, but if you read about it, you'll hear more stuff. But anyway, so I have to respect my mom because of her difficult experiences, but as I got closer to 30, I divulged to her that I was secretively seeing him. And so my mom was widowed by that time, and she knew I was getting up there in years. And she said, oh, no, go ahead, date him. You could go ahead and date him. She just wanted me to get married off. I said, no, he's not the right guy. He's not the right guy, so I move on. I don't like to waste people's time. You know, if not the right guy, you move on. You don't keep holding on to a person until you meet another person. I mean, you know. Okay, another question.
Do we have another question? And we have mics floating around. Okay, I'm coming your way.
Oh, good.
First of all, thank you for being here. And I don't mean to be racist, but when the Chinese come here, or people from different cultures, do they need to learn how the Americans work? I mean, do they have to learn how the mentality of Americans work and how to communicate well?
Well, today it's really up to each person what they want to do, because it is freedom, right? And people have their lives to live. So you have some people who really want to adapt, and some people who will just live in their communities, and they have their businesses and homes. And so, you know, it's really up to everyone what they want to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on that side of the room? Jaime, can you hold it up? There you go, up front, Jaime, up front. Hold your hand up again, sir. Thank you.
Hi, Mary.
Hey.
I know you talked about outsider, insider perspectives. So I know there's a recent book that came out called American Dirt, and this person, like, you know, pretty much brought up stereotypes of Latinos, you know, and wrote from an outsider perspective. So what are some methods we can use, like, as possible researchers, to, like as Spivak said, you know, give the voice to the subaltern, give a voice to the voiceless without speaking for them?
Okay, so as a researcher, you're asking me how do we get into the insider's view, or as people, when you're in interactions, intercultural interactions, how do you tap in more? As I mentioned, you could talk to them, explain what you're doing, and ask them how are they, what's appropriate for them. But as a researcher, I'll ask a series of interview questions. And what's important to me is I want to give voice to my participants. It's not my voice. I'm over there to collect the data, ask questions. I have to listen. So I really don't control the interviews because I'm there to listen and work off of their responses and then ask follow-up questions. Whereas most people think that when you do an interview, you have the interviewer, and I have all these questions here, and you answer them. But no, it happens the other way. If you really want to hear the voice of the natives, the voice of cultural members, that's really important. Be a good listener.
Do we have any other questions?
Oh, two back there. Ooh,
And I
another
have one
here.
over here. And those of you that need to leave, please take time to complete your evaluation forms. Thank you.
If you do the book signing, I'm going to sign your name quickly and then mine. But I have a little saying in the center. But you can always see me in the year.
Okay, I just have a little question. Is how you think is the people immigration to the United States, the Chinese generation different the culture for touch the United States the culture? How you think?
Okay. Are you asking how do Chinese immigrants
Yeah, to the United States.
come
and
to
then-
the United
Yes.
States? I'm not quite sure what your question is. So they come to the United States.
Yes, they are how to give it development for them the culture into the United States.
Oh, how's the Chinese culture here in the United States today?
Yes.
Oh, that's what you're asking. Well, I mean, some of the findings I have, it still remains, because culture doesn't just change in 2 years or 3 years. It just really depends on the social-cultural climate, what are the needs of the culture. But my findings still hold because I have students from Taiwan and different places like China, and they'll read my study, and I ask them, what do you think? They said, they validate it in class so far. I also, in my intercultural class from quarter to quarter, I always survey the students, how do you guys do it? What do you think? And then I could see a trend. But I haven't seen anything, there's no particular pattern. I'm not quite sure if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, that's okay. I just recommend is you speak the Chinese, is the Cantonese.
I'm Cantonese.
Yes. In the Chinese, the official the language is Mandarin. Could you please, is just you don't want to see I don't want you change to the Mandarin, but could you please have the Mandarin translate in the the
So the
slides.
participants for the study were Cantonese speaking.
Oh,
And
okay.
then after I finished the study, when I came to CSUSB, I had Taiwanese students. I showed them my study. I had a questionnaire. Do they agree, disagree? So they agreed with everything except the food. They said the foods were different. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Because a lot of times I can't understand for the Cantonese.
Right.
Thank you
Okay,
so much.
listen in English. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for a couple of more questions.
They have a mic.
I'm not sure if I'm. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
I love your first name, by the way. Many of my Asian students, when encountering non-Asian students or Asian people in general, non-Asian people in general, you know, there are these stereotypes, and keeping in mind the Chinese method of communication, going to that Zen-like place. How do you respond when someone who's not Asian American talks to another Asian American who's been here like you for 2 or 3 generations, and they compliment you on your English? Oh, you speak English so well.
Oh.
And many, I hear these same stories all the time. It's as if you are a perpetual foreigner in the United States.
Right.
So how would you respond?
How do I respond to that? I don't get that so much compared to when I first came here in 1992, and it was not diverse in the Inland Empire at all. So when I would call up, because I was in a studio apartment, I went to get my utilities, so the customer service would talk to me, and then they asked me for my name. So, oh, I didn't know you were Chinese. Your English, well, they would say my English is just really perfect. I thought you were a Caucasian person. And so I get that then, but today I don't have, or even beyond that time, I don't have Chinese or Asian people say I have really good English, because they know I'm American born.
I'm talking about American-born, non-Asian people complimenting you on speaking English so well.
Oh, I see. No, I don't have them. I haven't had that experience.
But many of our students have. So what would you recommend?
Oh, well, I just see it as a compliment. They're just trying to be friendly, build rapport with you. I don't think they're trying to do anything else, because the purpose behind a compliment is to build rapport, unity, and that's the intent. So it's really important in communications. You always have to look for the intent. You know, they might say it this way or that way or whatever, but what is really the insider's intent? You can hear the words, literally, but you always have to get to the intent. That's where the heart of that speaker is. And that's how you could bridge the gap in intercultural differences. And that's why you have to dialogue and negotiate.
Question in the back. Hello.
Hi.
Last summer, we had 3 Chinese students come and stay with us for a week, and we got rather close. And my husband is an animator and illustrator. He's drawing. One of the boys was very fascinated by it, and he shared some of his artwork with us and how he would like to explore being an artist like Americans have the opportunity, but his parents are encouraging him to go into business, of course. We still email one another quite often. They call me their aunt, and I'm curious how I can encourage him without being disrespectful to the future his family and him have agreed to pursue. Because he clearly has a talent, and his goal is to graduate high school this year, and he wants to come to America for university, but he will be pursuing business. Do you see where I'm going with it?
Yeah, my first question is, what does he think about majoring in business?
He just smiled and nodded. You could see he was uncomfortable, and I didn't want to assume, and I didn't want to, speak things that would be uncomfortable for him or disrespectful to his parents, but you could see it in his face. He had so many questions about, different things that weren't related to business. And when we said, oh, what kind of organization do you want to work with? And he looked sad, and he didn't really want to discuss it. He wanted to keep asking questions about the art.
Yeah, it is a dilemma. I've heard of the dilemma in which in some Chinese families, the parents really dictate what you will major in. And they say it's safe, and that's what they know. But to go into art, of course, parents get a little nervous. Most parents of any culture get a little nervous if you want to go into acting or drawing or something like that. And so for you to encourage, just say, I personally would just say that he has this talent, and to enjoy that passion, don't give it up. So at least he has that enjoyment in life, and see where that goes, his enjoyment. Ask him to enter into some contests That could also give him confidence, and his parents might say, oh, he's pretty good at it. He's being accepted by society. But I will also have a question about his passion for business. If it's both or whatever, try to do both.
That's a great idea. And he didn't want he didn't like the compliments we were giving, or he may have, but like you had explained, he didn't want to go any further. He looked very embarrassed.
Yeah, Chinese people love compliments, but they know externally, don't look like you're a hotshot or you think you're great or anything, because you gotta maintain that modesty. And so it's a little fine line. So the only thing is appropriately just reject the compliment. You're safe that way. Any other questions?
Let's give Dr. Fong another round of applause.